evening and welcome to another exciting show. And first of all, got an apology to make because last Thursday you was probably tuning in and thinking, where the heck is he? Um, well, I didn't. I said I was going to broadcast last Thursday, but I didn't. And the reason why is that bug that I picked up. I don't know what it was. I mean, it made your throat like glass paper. What happened is I went to see Miles on Wednesday, and he said, "Oh, he said you gave me the wagging finger." Dr. Miles Fleetwood, this is my, I call him my doctor, and he is my doctor. He said, "You should have come in the first day you had the bad throat." He said, "And you needn't have put your Monday show off." He said, "Because you'd have been better the next day." See, so I said, "Oh, sorry about that. Sorry, Miles." Anyway, he gave me these homeopathic tablets. They're perfectly legal, perfectly okay. I won't say what they are because I think if you've got a bad throat or anything like that, it's best to give him a phone call. Ask him what to have because everybody's different. Anyway, he gave me these tablets and I didn't take them until the next day, and I felt pretty languid the next day, and I wasn't really up to it. So, and the guest that I was going to have couldn't make it, so I decided to say, "Oh, sod it." So I didn't broadcast last Thursday. Please accept my apology. Now, I'm thinking I've got a lot of projects on at the moment, and normally things die down a bit sort of during the winter, but not so. And I will just be doing the Monday shows just for a couple of weeks, and I'll go back to 2 shows a week. Just whilst I've got this, I've got quite a heavy workload on at the moment. But anyway, sorry about that. And tonight my guest is Fred the Plant. Evening, Fred. You see Fred the Plant there, and me. I've decided to go solo again because tonight it's an alternative remembrance. Now you'll notice that even though it's after Remembrance Sunday, I never wear a poppy, and I never have worn a poppy. I never will wear a poppy, and I've come in for a fair amount of stick for it. Especially in my workplace, and that I was the only one not wearing a poppy in one place that I worked. And why aren't you wearing a poppy, sort of thing? Well, I've got a very good reason for not wearing one. I think it is, and well, I don't think it is. I know it is. And my father, who went through the full 6 years of frontline hell during World War II, he never wore a poppy, and he never had much time for the British Legion either, or the Royal British Legion as it was known after 1971. But before we start, I'll have a quick look in chat and then we'll kick off with the main show. Now, it's Bob again. Bob was the first one in, and we've got, hello Bob, good evening and welcome to the show. Thanks, mate. You're always a very, very loyal viewer, so you're always on the show. Thank you. And then we've got Ralph Winter. Hello, Ralph. And we've got Chris the Gardener. Good evening, Mr. Essex. Oh, isn't that polite? Don't tell him. Keep it quiet, just between yourselves. But he's on next week, but he doesn't know yet. So keep it quiet from him, it might give him a bit of a shock, but we've got Ancient Ruby. Hello, Ancient Ruby. And of course we've got Ralph saying good evening to Chris the Gardener. But no, we've got a lot of guests lined up for the future, and we've got quite a sort of a mixed bag of people. John Hamer's coming back. And also we've got Shannon, and we've got Robert. Robert's working at the moment. That's why you don't see too much of Robert at the moment. And of course we've got Wayne, and we've got a few others coming on the show as well. So all exciting stuff. Now, today I got an email from those charming people, YouTube, and I got a kind of, I don't know if it's a love note. It's a little bit early for February, Valentine's Day. And this is what they sent me. Here it is. They said, well, hang on, I better bring this up. I can't quite read it on there. Just one moment. Here we go. And they've given me another bang, to put it bluntly, and this is what they say. Hi, Eric Von Essex, isn't that friendly? We wanted to let you know our team reviewed your content and we think it violates our medical misinformation policy. We know you may not have realised this was a violation of our policies, so we're not applying a strike to your channel. However, we have removed the following content from YouTube. It's Over the Rainbow, which of course can be viewed on my BitChute channel. So to YouTube, we realise this may be disappointing. No, not really, YouTube, because truth doesn't require censorship. Only lies do. But it's our job to make sure that YouTube is a safe place for all. No. They worded that wrong. It's their job to make sure that communism is here and we're not allowed to think. Because if I'm talking a load of crap, it's up to the viewers to think that it's a load of crap, not up to YouTube. If you think we've made a mistake, no, you haven't. You can appeal this decision. No, it makes no difference at all. I've tried. You will find more details below and what our policy says. And so it goes, oh, this it says, YouTube does not allow content that spreads medical misinformation that contradicts the WHO or local health authorities. And so it goes on about cancer treatment. Now, I never said anything about cancer. So what the hell? God knows what they're on. But anyway, my attitude is truth doesn't need censorship. So I think the powers that be are getting very, very worried. And in fact, very worried indeed, because the more censorship there is, yippee, the more they're shooting themselves in the foot, because censorship is always counterproductive. And people are always intrigued. That's what civilization is all about. And that's what's built up civilization, by humans being intrigued. And censorship has always destroyed the censor. So crack on, YouTube, crack on. But as I say, it's shown me that I've got to get off YouTube as quickly as possible and onto somewhere like Rumble. Unfortunately, Odyssey is up for sale. And apparently they're looking for a buyer. Excuse me one moment. So that's sad, because Odyssey is 100% free. You know, you can say what you like on Odyssey, you know. And I like what is actually said in chat. We've got here, they make it up, Chris. You're quite right, Ancient Ruby, spot on. And Krista Garland says, oh dear, naughty step for you then, Chris. That's right, I've got to stand in the corner. And apparently up until I think it's the 30th of December, if I say tit or bum or something out that they don't agree with, they can take my whole channel down. Isn't that kind of them, you know? And we've got, so was it Angel Ruby? Yet they never give warnings to all the liars, do they? Grrr, yes, they never do. Yes, and I mean, I remember they took one of my shows down, which was about HSP, which is highly sensitive person, and there's loads of YouTube stuff, information about HSP. So why they picked on my one, I don't know. But there's loads. You tap it into YouTube and you find people talking about it all over the place about highly sensitive people. But I think what happens is that when I had that ban, the algorithms are like a sort of feeding frenzy. They go in heavier on the channel. It's like when there's blood in the water and sharks coming for a feeding frenzy. That's what the algorithms are like, I think. And I think it's because my show was, I mean, this is the ninth video they've taken down, and I've been banned 3 times. So it's pretty good going, really. You know, not bad. I'm quite proud of myself, you know. Anyway, on with the show. And I'll be talking about, by the way, Dosh a little bit later on. So stay tuned. Now, first of all, about remembrance. What is remembrance? Well, I think it's important to remember our ancestors of all nationalities. I'm not talking about just say with World War II, the Allies, I'm talking about both sides. Because when you think about war, especially in World War I and World War II, they were fought by conscript armies, and conscript armies where men are press ganged, and women press ganged into the forces. And when you look at, for example, the First World War, now the reason that Armistice Day is on the 11th of, I think it's the 11th hour, is because that's when the armistice was signed, or that's when the armistice was arranged. But the real truth of the matter is, officially, we're still at war, because the armistice was signed on carbon paper that was back to front. So it was gobbledygook. So officially, we're still at war with Germany. That's true, apparently. And I think the Channel Islands is as well, with World War II. But now that Germany is unified, I don't think we are so much. I don't know. But I know that for a fact we were officially still at war, because it was an armistice. First World War wasn't really over as such. But what they don't tell you about the First World War is they say that, because of American military might, Germany collapsed. Not quite true. What the truth that they keep back, and you can look this up, is 100% true, is because the French army mutinied, and they refused to go over the top. And not only the French army mutinied, but the German navy mutinied, and they marched on Berlin collecting ammunition and rifles on the way, and they mutinied as well. So they couldn't continue the war because the armies had actually mutinied. And the British army, few of them did, but it was mainly the high-ups, and there was not sort of, there was a show, a play or film called The Monochled Mutineer, but we did what we were told, the English, or the British, although I don't like using the term British, because British stands for the aristocracy, as I've said many times before, because we've got English, Scottish, Welsh in Northern Ireland, or Irish of these islands, and we're not British as such, because the British are the Normans, and people like the aristocracy and the royals, they're British, but I'm nothing to do with them, I'm glad to say. And anyway, actually, this is what's this, Ancient Ruby? Yes, true, Chris. Once banged, never forgotten. Yes, yes. And Ancient Ruby said, all those men that fought the wars are turning in their graves nowadays. I agree with you, knowing what they see, the truth, and probably why more naughty spirits are rising. Well, my father said, and this was in 2009, he died in 2010, and oh, hang on, we got Stig from New Zealand. Hey, morning, Stig. And could I have a cup of coffee, please? Thank you very much. No sugar for me. And anyway, he was being means tested, my dad. Now, my dad was a conscript in November 1939. He was conscripted into the 2nd Devons, even though he was from London, because I always conscripted people as far away from their home as possible so they didn't run home. Nice, isn't it? And he was sent to Malta, where he went through the full siege of Malta, where he almost starved to death. And then he was the first one in on the invasion of Sicily, first one in an invasion of Italy, and one of the first assault waves in on D-Day on Gold Beach jig section. So I think you'd seen some action. And the reason he couldn't stand the Royal British Legion, I'll come on to a little bit later, because I've got to sort of go through the history of the real history as such. We was going through the First World War, and the real reason it came to an end is because of mutiny, and that they couldn't fight, they couldn't carry on with the war as such. But also, after the war, the men were promised a land full of bread, what is it now, milk and honey, and a land fit for heroes. They came back to worse unemployment than you could ever wish to think of. And there was almost, and I've said this many times before, a revolution in this country, because there was a lot of veterans organisations, some militant, some not so militant, some very placid. There's all kinds. And what happened is there was, if you look at the newspapers at that time, they played it down. You got to look several pages in, but there was riots in Luton, and the those in control and the hidden hand were very worried that there's going to be a revolution, because you had a lot of men that have come out of the First World War from the trenches, all trained on how to use rifles and arms. And of course, up until the 1920 Firearms Act, you could actually buy arms over the counter in much the same way as you can in some states in America. People don't realise that you could actually buy, armaments over the counter. And of course, you had all these young, fit men, and obviously there's a lot of disabled and unfit, but they were trained on how to kill, and a very dangerous situation. And of course, there was riots up and down the country. And if you can look through those newspapers of those times, around about 1918, 1919, it was on a knife edge. And they didn't have what they call it now when they silence newspapers, but the newspapers were censored to actually stop there being any, because also you had communists actually stirring trouble up as well. And as I say, they rushed through Parliament the 1920 Firearms Act, and then in 1921 the British Legion was started. And what they did, now I know this for a fact, because where I used to live, I lived amongst, they were very, very old at the time, and I was very, very young. I mean, I just sort of started school as a sort of 6, 7 years of age. But these veterans used to speak, and I was a shy little kid. I wasn't a mixer, and like I am now, I'm very much a loner. And I never played football or anything like that, and I was always on my own. And I sort of made friends with these old boys, these veterans, and I used to listen to what they used to say. But unfortunately, as a child, you look in the world in a completely different way. And if only I'd have taken notes, although I don't think I was old enough to learn to read and write in those days. And they were talking, and I noticed quite a few of them, as well as my dad, never wore a poppy on Poppy's Day. And I used to hear them talking, and then what I found out about 15, 20 years ago, it all made sense what they were saying, because there was a lot of veterans, as I say, organisations some were very militant, and they got infiltrated, and the ringleaders, or the leaders of these organisations, were they were trashed. Because the infiltrators, what they did is they dragged their names through the mud, and of course the power of the press and everything like that. And I remember the old boys talking, saying, "Oh, he was an honest bloke, and isn't it terrible what happened to old Watsit," and things like that. And then they formed the British Legion in 1921, which I believe, and this is my own belief, it is nothing more than a government mouthpiece that projects an image of veterans that best suits successive governments. And what they did, they installed patriotism into people, and they carried on the militarism, but it was very pacifist. And in, I think in 1936, they actually sent a peace envoy over to speak to Hitler in Germany. And again, people don't realize that, because what they did is the attitude in those days was very pacifist, because the people have had a gut full of war, they'd lost their loved ones, and they never wanted another war again. So there's lots of peace organisations, and there was a very famous Oxford Union debate. I think that was 33, 34. You can tell me in chat if I'm wrong on that. That said that none of the people at the Oxford Union, if there was another war, would actually participate in that war, because we've had enough of war. But when war did come along in 1939, they all signed up. So that's a load of doodah. But anyway, on with the British Legion. They had a peace delegation that went, and I think it was a vicar, an ex-military man, and that, and they went to Germany and they tried to have these peace negotiations. And then in 1939, it became very political, the organisation. And when my father was conscripted, now remember, he was conscripted, he had no choice in the matter. And the strange thing is, that on his call-up papers, it had Territorial Army at the top. Now, Territorial Army was a volunteer army. So that future historians will look at his call-up papers and think, oh, he's a volunteer. Wrong, he wasn't. That is another sleight of hand in history. That's where historians get things wrong. They will look through, and I know there's a particular book which said that my dad's unit were all volunteers. They weren't, they were conscripts, because the historian, a young bloke, had looked through the archives and saw the call-up papers that were Territorial Army. So that is, that is a sort of a bad thing in history, which again, they did that deliberately so that future generations would look back and get it all wrong. And when you think about it, you had a conscript army against a conscript army. Not everybody wants to fight. And I know that in the First World War, the officers used to walk along the trenches, ordering the men to aim their rifles lower, because they used to fire above the heads of the enemy, and the enemy used to do the same, because they didn't want to kill anybody, because it's natural for a human being not to want to kill. And to put somebody, a young man, a young boy, I mean, my dad was 20 when he was conscripted, kid, basically, they're kids, put them in where they're seeing death and destruction and try and turn them into killers. And you've only got to see the film Platoon and other films about Vietnam, what they did there. It was horrendous what actually happened. But what we have now is a war justification industry where they've got to justify war. And this is something that I cannot understand at the cenotaph. It says, the glorious dead. What's glorious about being dead? Why is, to me, it's like a death cult. Yes, I believe we should honour our ancestors, but what's come since 1945, and you get these politicians such as Tony Blair standing at the cenotaph, putting his fake choke look on like this, and with his poppy, I think is an absolute disgrace, and it's an insult to our ancestors and everybody else, and also these politicians who I think that got successive governments since before 1945, I think since, say, over 100 years, have done more to destroy this country than any enemy could have ever dreamt of. They're biggest traitors ever, and how they had the gall to stand at the cenotaph is absolutely beyond my belief, and this is what annoys me. But going on a little bit further, there's more twists in history that we don't actually hear about. For example, again, before the troops went for D-Day, my father had already seen 2 previous invasions and almost died of malnutrition in the siege of Malta. But they had all their paybooks removed, and there was issued new paybooks which said that everyone was A1 fit. None of them had a medical at all. And a lot of them were totally unfit. They had patched up wounded because they were the first assault wave. And the first assault wave, Montgomery admitted afterwards, and you can look this up in books, that the lot that my father was in was expected to be completely wiped out. So they put what was called battle-hardened troops in, first of all, which is not. It was the unfit to get them wiped out. But also, it was part, as I believe, a euthanasia attempt so as to save on welfare after the war, because it's cheaper to bury someone than to keep them for several years on welfare. And that is an area which, again, I'll come on to a little bit later. But let's have a quick look back into chat. And wow, we've got a lot in chat tonight. Now, let's have a look. Oh, hello, this is nice. Oh, we got Stig saying, good day there. And we've got Louise Wilcox. Hello, everyone. Hope you're all well. Oh, well, hang on. Yes, I hope everybody is. And if you've got that nasty virus thing, contact Miles. He knows how to get over it. And we've got Ancient Ruby. Made me mad when I heard you were made to go into service for 3 years, but if you wanted out after 3 years, you had to pay. Well, actually, no, what it was, up until recently, criminals, if someone had been, say, was a youth, and there was, what they used to call a juvenile delinquent, been in trouble with the law, they would actually get a choice of either having going, I think it was 2 years in the army or 3 years in the army, or serving a jail sentence. So the criminals went into the army, and that's something my father was upset about, because he was conscripted and he was amongst a load of criminals. Not all. There was a mixture of people, loads of people, and there were some people that were very intellectual as well. There was managers, senior people. It was a whole mixture of people. But the thing is that they were pressed men. They didn't volunteer. Whereas in the First World War, it was a volunteer army until 1916, where they'd run out of cannon fodder, and they had to introduce conscription. And but when you look at the people falling over themselves to volunteer, what people don't realise, there hadn't actually been a war in Europe where Britain was actually involved for a generation. So they didn't quite know what war was about, and it was so much glamorized by the powers that be. And remember, with the First World War, people say it started in 1914. Not quite right, because it started in people's minds by the newspapers about 20 years prior. So they were building up, a hatred for the Hun, as they were called then, 20 years before it started, because if you believe Alfred Pike's 3 World Wars, who was a Freemason in the 1860s, there was, some people say that it was due to start earlier, but it was a planned war. And it's no coincidence that the Federal Reserve Act was signed in 1913, and World War I started in, I believe it was August 1914. Where did they get the money from? I let you guess that one. And who was actually chomping at the bit for war? It was Winston Churchill. Now, Winston Churchill, not exactly our hero, and there's a lot of Churchill worship, and I know I'm going to upset a lot of people, but it's all, oh, Winnie this and Winnie that. No, I think he was out and out. I personally believe that he was an out and out psychopath. He loved war, and they called him a bloody old warmonger. But again, there is a lot of evidence that he was a paid-for politician, because there is evidence that a large banking family beginning with R was behind financing him for being very bellicose in the First World War. And in the Second World War, prior to the Second World War, he was a gambler, and he lost a lot of money, and he is in debt to the tune of £19,500. Okay, and you can look this all up. It's all on, it's all openly available if you know where to look. And the City of London paid off his debts. Isn't that amazing? Isn't it? City of London paid his debts off because he was going to lose Chartwell, which was his house. Again, £19,500 doesn't sound a lot of money today, but it was in the 1930s. And it is believed, even though there's no real written evidence of it, that it was a case of the City of London said, yes, we'll pay your debts off as long as you do what we tell you. And it was very strange how he became Prime Minister, because he was a backbencher. He was MP for Chingford, and he was a bit of a joke. And what happened is the chap who waved the piece of paper, come on, brain, think. Sorry, it's just, I know his name off by heart, but it's sort of got out. Chamberlain, that's the word. Chamberlain, who waved the piece of paper. he died very quickly, and some people, again, there's no evidence of this, reckon he was done in. And then suddenly Churchill was unelected, came into power. Now they say he came into power, but it was a coalition government during World War II, and it was Clement Attlee of the Labour Party that actually ran the country, and Churchill was the mouthpiece. And he wanted total war all the time, but Lord Halifax wanted peace. And there is a lot of evidence, because I think it was Mr. H, it was, I know it's over 60 attempts he made via the Swedish ambassador for peace negotiations. And Halifax wanted to take these peace negotiations up. And according to the late Dave Starbuck, who looked into this, when the German, what was his name now, who flew over here, and I'm just trying to think of his name. Sorry, I've not made any notes. This is straight all from memory. Rudolph, not the Red-Nosed Reindeer, no. He was put in Spandau prison for the rest of his life. Rudolph, anyway, it'll come. Was it Hess? That was it, sorry. When Hess flew over here in 1941 in Messerschmitt 110, he came for peace talks. And now I'm going off of the official line now. And he realized that there was a large peace movement in this country that wanted peace, and he came here to negotiate peace. And now this is according to Dave Starbuck. There was two groups of intelligence, Churchill's intelligence and the British intelligence. And Churchill's intelligence got to him first, and then you got locked in the Tower of London. And according to Dave Starbuck, what happened is Hess, the Queen's uncle, who was gay, and the ambassador of Sweden got into a Sunderland flying boat and were flying to, I think it was Sweden, for peace negotiations with Germany. And what happened is this Sunderland flying boat, it was perfect weather conditions. The crew were very experienced air crew. It crashed onto a Scottish island and everyone was killed. And when the air crash investigators analysed it, again, this is all in the records, they discovered that acid had been applied to the ailerons. So it was a, shall we say, designer crash. So that's very, very fishy. And Dave Starbuck believed that the Hess that was in Spandau prison was not Hess. It was a doppelganger, because there's lots of talk that his family weren't allowed near him, and they was going to release Hess. The Russians wanted to release, and a couple of others wanted to release Hess because he was a very old man. But they realised they couldn't release him, and that's why he was murdered, because he couldn't have hung himself the way he was found. And I think it was 1980s he hung himself. Well, no, he was assisted hanging, I believe. So that's all very, very murky. And of course, I don't think our generations will ever find out what really happened until, well, 100 years time at least. But that is according to Dave Starbuck. But on with the story about alternative or political remembrance, why I don't wear a poppy and why I never have worn a poppy since I was a kid, and I've taken a lot of stick for it as well. And the reason why is because, as I said, in 1921 the Royal British Legion was, sorry, it wasn't the Royal then, it was the British Legion, was formed. My father, when he was conscripted into forces, forcibly had money taken out of his meagre sort of, they gave him money, won't call it a wage or pay or whatever out of his pay for the British Legion, and he protested about it. And they said, "Oh, it's." But he said, "Hang on a minute, this is supposed to be a charity. Surely you give voluntary." And he made a bit of a hoo-ha about it, and they didn't stop the pay. They actually replenished the pay, but everybody got a percentage taken out of their pay to go to the British Legion, which he thought was unfair, because if it's a charity, sure, you give voluntary, and it was a charity then. Well, what happened is, excuse me, I just have a glass of water. Come 1945, when people were demobbed, the conscripts, and my dad couldn't wait to get out of the forces. He hated every minute of it. And my uncle, he couldn't wait to get out of it as well. People had a gutful of militarism. And then, after 1945, they noticed on Remembrance Day, not all, there were some ex-people that were in battles, they called them the T-Boy and Just Missed It Brigade. Loads and loads of people joining in the British Legion, marching on, who weren't in the war or were in supplies or never saw any action, and had bought medals. Now, I'm not saying everybody. I make that clear, not everybody. There's some real genuine ones in the British Legion, but there are a minority that are fakes. They often get found out, but not always. But anyway, what happened is my father, who survived, who wasn't supposed to survive, I don't think, because he had very bad malaria, which he picked up, I believe, in Sicily. And because it was a very hot summer, 48 days after D-Day, when they were inland, he had a relapse of malaria. And someone saved his life. And there's a reason why my name is Chris, because the man that saved his life was called Chris. So there we go. And that's why I'm called Chris. And that's the man I think of on Remembrance Day, even though I never met him, because unfortunately he didn't survive the war, but he saved my dad's life. And my dad was put on a draft to go to Burma, which is the most malarious area in the world, when he was brought back to England. And he was suffering from malaria, a very bad malaria as well. And he was confident that it was to finish him off. I won't say any more than that, but after the war, I mean, he survived. And after the war, he was awarded, he came out of the forces in 1945, grade E, which is the lowest grade you can be. He went in A1 fit, and he was completely unfit for further service. He was awarded a disability pension, and he wore a badge to show that he was disabled, war disabled. And in 1950, to keep this pension, you had to go to a board every year where you were literally tortured. Yes, you were tortured. And my dad said all it needed was the lamp in front of you, and they were put in front of it was like a court of law with very educated people who would fire questions at him and then change the subject and get him confused, and he had to be carried out of this medical board. And what they made the excuse of is that his shell shock and injuries were brought on by his childhood. Unbelievable. And people were given the most unbelievable excuses to stop their pension. His pension was stopped. And then in the late 1980s, the government quietly realised that they'd stopped incorrectly, and you could reapply. So he reapplied, and they lost all the details, and that a year went past, and he reapplied again, and he got his pension back, but there was no repayment. So he didn't get repayment from the 50s, 60s and 70s, and obviously the 80s, when he needed that money. All he got was a menial bit at the end of the 1980s. So really, when you look at it, why, if the British Legion were for the service people, why didn't they bring London to a halt and say to the government, you pay these men their pensions or else we'll bring London to a halt? Why? Because I believe they're a government propaganda agency. And when you go onto the government website, there's a link to the Royal British Legion, because it became Royal British Legion in 1971. Before then, it was just called the British Legion. So that's one of many reasons my father never wore a poppy, and I never bought or wore a poppy either, and never will. And because I don't think that they were the serviceman's best friend, because that government directed pensions fraud has been swept under the carpet, and shall we say the historical carpet, and sealed. And you see, the British Legion will help you get your rightful entitlements, but through the, shall we say, through the bureaucratic channels. Yes, they'll help you, yes, but they won't fight for things like that. They won't speak up for the service people or anything like that. And it lets government off the hook as well. You know, it's all right sending the men to war, but afterwards they're an encumbrance, and they're made to be known as an encumbrance. Now, if you want to find out any more about this, go onto this website. Here we are. There's yours truly on there. If you look at the film on the top left, that had to go onto, it couldn't go onto YouTube because it would be taken off. So that is actually on a different platform, and that is called the War Propaganda Industry. Sorry, the War Justification Industry. There you can see an advert for in the middle for tonight's show. And as I say, it's www.warveteran.co.uk. You'll find out more. And of course, I did an alternative D-Day during the D-Day memorial thing. I did an alternative remembrance there as well. So I think I probably covered Remembrance tonight. I'll waffle on a bit. I go on to automatic, but I think that it's important to realize that there are two versions of what actually happens. The first version is what the government wants you to believe, and the second version is what people actually went through and what they suffered. And I think that it is hypocrisy. And I believe in, as I say, we should remember those that have fallen, but on all sides, because what is also overlooked is the kindness. We always look at the horrors, we look at the hell that goes on, but what we don't hear about is the brave men of both sides who risk their lives to save enemy that have been killed. Sorry, not killed, injured. There's a very famous case of some Germans that heard an American in the middle of a minefield who was badly injured, and a senior rank, and a couple of them, he plotted a way through this minefield so that stretcher bearers could get to this injured American, and the poor man got blown up by a mine, but the American survived, and the American army has put a plaque up to that very brave German. I don't think he was a general. I think he was a sort of a senior rank. A plaque to that man for his kindness. There was also what happens with my father, because he was in the frontline intelligence, very low rank, and he was going as a conscript, and they had the highest casualty rate. They had to go ahead of the front line and put markers down and watch what was going on. And they were often surrounded, and some German stretcher bearers wandered into their lines, and they said, "We're here to save lives." One of them could speak English, but there's quite a few in the intelligence that could speak German. And they said, "We will go out and collect wounded of both sides, because we realise that the battle is so ferocious that it's knocked out a lot of medics and British stretcher bearers." And they risked their lives for 48 hours non-stop, going out, saving the lives of wounded soldiers. They could have wandered back into their own lines, but they didn't. They kept their word. And eventually they had to be ordered to stop because it was against the Geneva Convention, and they had to be taken back to a prisoner of war camp. And when they left, most of the men were very, very choked because they were such nice men and so kind. And you think they could have gone to a prisoner of war camp, but they chose to save lives. We don't hear about those stories. And when my father was alive, we put a request out in Remembrance, on Remembrance Day, on Classic FM, and it was absolutely fantastic what Classic FM did fuck all. They actually, excuse my language, they just ignored us, and because it doesn't go along with the the general shall we say attitude, and my dad was quite choked actually. They didn't put anything on and I thought it was quite a touching story. I also wrote to some German newspapers, and my father wasn't well enough to go, but I went down and spoke to a journalist down in London. I was working in London at the time, so it was quite easy for me to pop along. There's the Welt, the German newspaper, and the bloke was very, very interested, but they never printed it. It never printed. So you don't hear of those. There was another, my father witnessed several occasions where Allied and Germans would risk their lives to save the wounded. So you don't hear of those stories at all. That's what I think Remembrance should be about. The kind people, the innocent people, the people who put their lives at risk to save others. We don't hear about that at all. And this is why if you go onto this site, you'll hear a lot more and see a lot more about what is said. As I say, I won't labour on about it, but that is part of what I call my alternative remembrance. So let's go into chat and cheer things up a little bit, shall we? Now, there's a heck of a lot here in chat. Where do I start? Now, Hideous Getfoot said, and pay for your board and lodgings. It's not like you can go home. That's right. Yeah, you can go home. And I agree with you here. Yes, Dan MC, conscript this. Yes. But again, remember, on the papers it said territorial army. So historians will look back and think, oh, a volunteer. That's how they get all the statistics wrong. Ali Bev says, I can't support any wars as it's not my battle. Send the political class to fight their own battles. I 100% agree with you. And in 1940, I think it was the Athena, was sunk by a German U-boat. And in the press, guess who was on board the Athena? It was politicians and the gentry's sons of military age who were legging it to America, because America wasn't in the war at that stage. And the Germans knew this and they sunk it, and it caused a hell of a hoo-ha that all these sons of the high-ups were on board this ship that was going. But again, that's, shall we say, there's two versions of World War II, what they want you to believe and what really happened. That's left out of it, Now, I think it would be in bad. No, I was going to say about my dad's book, but I won't. If you're interested, it would be on the website, and I think it'd be in bad taste to promote it, so I won't. But my dad wrote a book about his experiences, but I won't say any more than that. If you're interested, please go on that website. Now, Ancient Ruby has said all wars are planned. Yes, well, you look at the First World War. The Federal Reserve Act was signed in 1913, December the, I think it was the 7th. I know it's in December. Or it was around about Christmas time. Give me a minute, I need to wet my whistle. And 1914, there's evidence that, let's face it, wars need money. Where do they get the money from? Just think, yes. And of course, wars are very good for banks because, now they make money out of them. So they eat them. And I know the family beginning with R, with a child at the end, yes, they've made a fortune out of loads of wars. Now, eugenicists, yes, that's Winston Churchill. Yes, because people don't realise that Churchill was a eugenicist, and the chap who was the architect of the NHS, who was, come on brain, who was the William Beveridge, again, sorry, this is all from memory, William Beveridge, he was second in command of the Eugenicist Society, and I've actually got a picture of the Eugenicist Society here, if I can find it. Where is it? Now, I'll probably piss a lot of people off with what I said to this evening, but I do apologise. But that's now, where is the Eugenicist Society? It is, well, it was here. It's gone somewhere. No, can't find it. Now, that doesn't really matter. But no, the Eugenicist Society, William Beveridge, who masterminded the NHS, he was a second in command of it. Interesting, isn't it? It's very, very interesting, you know. Now, Ancient Review said, they are all a joke in my opinion. Yes. Well, you notice who fights the wars? You know, it's not the people that design them that fight the wars. It's the poor souls that fight the wars. And remember, wars are fought by forgotten heroes for lost causes. I mean, let's face it, Aden. Now, Aden was in the early 60s. This country was involved in Aden. Lots of people got killed and injured. And I think they were conscripts, the army then. Who gives a shit about Aden today? The Korean War. Who knows about? You go up to youngsters in the high street and ask them about the Korean War, they wouldn't have a clue. You know, they wouldn't know anything about it. They say, Korea, what's that? You know, Korean War. There's loads of other wars. You look at the Vietnam War. Now, you can go to Vietnam on holiday now. People are buying property over there. But the Vietnam War was fought in America, and that was a conscript army. And the reason, the Americans were beaten is because you think there's some poor sod living in a nice part of America, and he's just left school, suddenly gets his draft papers along, he's whisked off to Vietnam, in the jungle, completely alien environment, and spends 18 months getting shot at and through shit and muck, seeing the most horrible things imaginable, then gets flown back to America and supposed to carry on his life as normal. You know, I mean, that generation were absolutely destroyed. But Sweden and Canada did very well out of it because they had amnesty for people that wanted to escape the draft. And they reckoned that the Canada, it was mainly, you know, like computer technicians and people like that. And you look how well the industries in the 60s, 70s and onwards were in Sweden and Canada, thanks to Americans who appointed the draft. And there's a lot of Americans that did that. And I don't even blame them. I would as well. Because, as I always said, that I would be a conscientious objector. I would not fight in any war. But failing that, I had a plan that I always had a passport ready. And the secret is if there was any war, they close the borders. They don't let you escape. But if you go to Northern Ireland, you can walk over the border to Southern Ireland. And then I was planning that if there was any situation when I was of military age, I would leg it over the border to Southern Ireland, then catch a plane to Canada. Because I've got relatives, they're dead now, but I had relatives in Canada where I could have stayed with, and I could have got to what they call it, political asylum over there. So that was my plan. So you never know. If there'd have been a war, I'd have probably been speaking with a Canadian accent and speaking from Canada now. Who knows? See, so there it is. But that was my little idea, you know. Now this is interesting. They can fake war today. Yes, they can. Yes. Well, you know that picture of Saddam Hussein when they were knocking his statue down. Well, that's a very closely shot photograph. And if you see someone to take the picture at a distance, there's a group of about, I don't know, 20 people, and there's American armored vehicles around it, and it was a staged photograph. There's cars going along in the background and nobody give a shit. That was staged. It's all all part of propaganda. Now, Chris the Gardener has said, spot on, Chris. Thank you, Chris. Churchill was a complete scumbag. Oh, you're praising him there. A narcissistic little crook. I used to admire him like so many others until I saw things differently. Yes, I know for a fact, again, this is all, whether you find it in the history books or not, I don't know. But when I was at school, they had moved a load of families out from the East End and moved them into a sort of a street near where I live. Well, not near my school. And these kids, their parents had been through World War II, or their grandparents had, and they said that Churchill went to the East End and he said, "Oh, we couldn't take it," and the women pelted him with eggs and came out with their rolling pins and were about to bloody attack him, and him and his bodyguard had to jump into his car and leg it pretty quick. And she said, but these kids were saying that he had a close call there. The women were fuming because some of them had been bombed out of their houses. You know, we couldn't take it. Not very wise thing to say. And it is said that a lot of these pictures of him supposedly in the East End weren't in the East End, but staged. I don't know. I don't know whether that's true or not. If anybody does know, please let me know. I don't know, but I have heard it said from various sources that they were all staged photographs, not in the East End, because he's frightened of going there. Now we got here. Hello, Robert. I was talking about you earlier. I said you're busy. That's why I haven't seen you very often. Good evening, one and all. And I hope you're not working too hard, because what is it? Work is the curse of the drinking classes, wasn't it? Oscar Wilde said that. And we've got Ali Bev, spot right on. Churchill was bought and paid for. And if you go on to Godfrey Bloom's channel, he did a fantastic speech, a talk with another chap about did this country need to get involved with the First World War? And it came out that we didn't. And a lot of historians have said this, that we didn't need to get involved. And he said on that channel that Churchill was a paid for politician in the First World War. And it was the Roth and the children bit, you know, who were paying him. So that's quite interesting, isn't it? So now we got Robert, worked for a headhunter in London's West End. Bloody hell. It's a bit bloodthirsty, isn't it? One of the board members was ex-Welsh Guards. His last duty before being demobbed was guarding Rudolf Hess. Bloody hell, mate. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Well, the way I got it from Dave Starbuck, I mean, he's passed away now several years ago, because Dave Starbuck was the first person, even before David Icke, to open up about what's really going on. And he started something called Revelation Tapes. It sounds like a religious organization, but it wasn't. And he made tape recordings where he interviewed people. This is long before the internet, and sold these tapes to people. And he made quite a very good business out of it. And he used to advertise in Nexus magazine. I don't know if you know Nexus magazine. I used to advertise in there as well. And he was I know the editor of Marcus Allen. He's still around, and he talks about the moon landings, or the fake moon landings. He's an excellent communicator. But what Dave Starbuck said, that because he could speak German, a little bit of German, and he was always going to Vienna, and he went to Berlin, and he caught the train back, and him and his ex-wife were on board this train, and there was a lady sitting opposite who was English, and she was in the British Army, and they you know, they started up a conversation, and up until then, Dave Starbuck believed that the official line about Rudolf Hess, and then this woman who guarded Rudolf Hess, or had something to do with the guarding of Rudolf. I don't think she guarded him. I think she was in Spandau prison doing some administrative work. She said, "Well, you know that it's not Rudolf Hess. We all know that." He went, "What?" And when he heard that and what she had to say, that he was a doppelganger in there, that's when he started to do his research and found out that he had, well, according to Dave Starbuck, he'd actually got killed in that Sunderland flying boat accident with the Queen's uncle and the ambassador of Sweden. And so, you know, it's quite interesting. But that's interesting. Thanks, Robert. That really is bloody interesting. Yes, before being, because I think it was in the late 80s. Rudolf Hess was. I think he was killed. I really do believe he was killed. You know, but because apparently that's it. Dave Starbuck went through the medical reports, and the real Rudolf Hess had a scar from the First World War, but the Rudolf Hess in Spandau didn't have that scar, and I think the dental records are all different as well. Lots and lots and lots of weird anomalies there, you know. Now we got here. As Aunt Sally. Hello, Aunt Sally. Evening, folks. Been listening from a lovely hot bath. Well, hope you don't drop your computer in the bath by mistake. Yes, but I think I might have just missed you when I went to see Miles the other day. Was you in Miles last Wednesday? Don't know, but I think it was hissing. I wouldn't say pissing with rain because that's rude, but it was hissing with rain. So I think that's more polite, isn't it? I got bloody thoroughly soaked. Anyway, I hope you're well, Aunt Sally, and I hope your doggies are very well as well. I heard about them with the fireworks, so, you know, because they keep letting off fireworks around where I live. I don't know quite why. Anyway, Robert Dorr, shades of Jeffrey Epstein with the murder of Herr Hess. Yes, we do not know the truth, the full truth. Well, it's only just came out that the British Secret Service killed Rasputin in Russia, and they murdered him, and I think it was 1917 or 18, something like that, because they wanted Russia to come into the war to relieve the pressure on the British forces in the First World War, and Rasputin was against them, you know, against Russia entering into the war. So, so it's all very murky, isn't it? You know. And Robert Dawes says, "Hi Ruby, working late, just dropped in to say hello before heading home. Hope you're well. Kisses to you." Oh, poor sod, he's still at work. Oh, blimey, you know. He certainly works right hard, Robert does, you know. And by the way, mate, you missed on the show, so, you know, welcome back as soon as you can, you know. And now, Ancient Ruby says they are torturing the disabled nowadays too. Well, as I say, these medical boards, they used to torture the blokes there. For example, there was a chap who had an arm that had been severely injured. I don't know what had happened to it. My dad said this bloke was screaming in agony as I kept turning his arm round and round and round and round and round. And it's all designed so you tell them to stick their pension. And also, it was you was there all day, so you had to lose a day's pay of work. And then they'd drag it out and say, well, you'd have to come along the next day, and things like that. They'd make your life as miserable as possible, you know. So you're good enough to go and fight, but afterwards you can go and sod yourself sort of attitude. That's basically what it was, you know. They lose things on purpose. Yes, when my father reapplied for his disablement pension, they lost all the details. He had to send it all again. That's convenient. He lost a year's pension. Well, only a year. He lost bloody 30, 40 years of pension, you know. Aunt Sally, the British establishment literally shat on all those poor veterans. Yes, they did. with, in my view, with the help of well, I won't go into it, but I think you know what I'm going to say, with an association that I have nothing to do, that I've got no time for. Agree, Chris. Oh, that's very kind, thank you. And now it says it were ever thus. Ian McKellen starred in an excellent yet very hard to watch play called Water. That's it, really that. Oh, thanks, Robert. Thanks, mate. 10 likes for 30 watchers. For shame, listeners, for shame. Ah, that's very kind. That's very, very kind. Yeah, please stick the old thumbs up. Whee, you know. And by the way, shall we have a to YouTube this week? Yes. Now, we've got comments down here. Let's have a go down here. Listening to all that suffer are worth listening to. Well, when you come to think about it, it's like a death cult, isn't it? I mean, what does the poppy represent? To me, it represents the opium trade, and there's lots of write-ups about it. That, you know, why choose a poppy? Why not a carnation? Why not an English rose? Why not something else? You know, why poppy? Why the opium trade? And when you saw, I know that it was the 100th anniversary of the end of the First World War. It was like blood coming out of windows at the Tower of London. To me, that was very death cultish. Give me one moment. Pardon me, I'm terribly sorry. It's like the it's like a joke about the undertakers funeral cortege going up a hill, and the coffin slips out the back of the lorry. Sorry about that. I'm still not over this blooming thing. That's better. Anyway, coffin slides down his hill and goes in, slides into a chemist shop, and the lid opens. And the corpse inside says, "Excuse me, have you got anything to stop my coughing?" Sorry, it's a terrible joke, isn't it? Now, so here, listening to all that supper are worth listening to. Well, yes, I mean, you very, very, very really see what my dad used to call them. As I say, my dad never wore his medals at all. I've still got them, and they're tarnished, and all the medal ribbons are frayed. And he told me to keep them that way forever, to show people the way he received them. And they were absolutely disgraceful. And he worked with a Canadian chap who got his medals, and they were beautiful. And all other nationalities, the medals were presented with honour. In Britain, they're just thrown at you, basically. Absolutely disgusting. And I've still got them. They're absolutely, you know, and because he never wore his medals, he never dressed in all the uniforms and that. People said, you're not, and he caught one veteran out once. He was at St Albans. This is going back many years, and this chap was standing there, you know. And when my dad written the book, he actually had a chap contact him and say that he missed the war, but he goes around schools making out as a D-Day veteran, and he wanted my dad's book so it could be more authentic. Absolutely unbelievable. Incredible. This bloke's never seen any action in his life. And anyway, my dad was at St Albans once, and there's this fella standing proudly like this. And they said, oh, you noticed this badge on his medal? He said, you're in D-Day? Yes, I was the first one in. Yes, yes, yes. Really? He said, which were you on? He said, Omaha. He said, so you're American, are you? And my dad started asking him a few questions. And he said, well, you said you were the first one in, but you're in the Royal Artillery. They went in much later. How do you know this? He said, I was in the 231 Brigade, 2nd Devon's Gold Beach Jig Section. I was the first one in. He went, oh, and he literally ran. He legged it because he realised that my dad had found him out. You know, and a lot of people, can you excuse me just one moment, please? I'll just turn my microphone off just for a few seconds. I need to blow my nose. Not very nice. That's it. That's better. And now what's happened is a lot of these people made it bad for the genuine people. And that's it. These are the people that the glamour, you know, the glamour boys and all that making it way out. And this character that's going around schools talking a load of crap to kids, again, it makes it bad for the genuine ones. And this is what I'm interested in. Always, that's why I say I'm always on the side of the innocent and genuine person, because you never hear the innocent and genuine person's story. You always hear the glossy version that governments want you to hear. And also, what happens is newspapers and the media get awash with all this glamour and crap, and they put their own glamour and crap into stories. So, you know, it's very difficult to find the truth. And I think the worst place to try and find the truth is local and national newspapers. You never find it in there. Right. Now, this is interesting. Ancient Ruby says, agree, Chris. And all the animals involved too. Yes. In the First World War, especially horses, they were treated terrible. You know, it's like that thing, war horse. But what they don't tell you is they used mules in the Far East because it's easier to use mules to carry ammunition boxes and, you know, materials and stuff than anything else when you're going through jungle. And what they did, they took their vocal cords out, these mules, to keep them quiet so that the Japanese didn't hear them. Now, when these mules met other mules, they like to communicate, but they couldn't, and it absolutely drove them mad. And there was an ex-soldier talking about it, and he said he's in tears. He said the cruelty was unbelievable. It was terrible. But also, cats were actually used in the First World War. Pigeons were as well, and they were used in the Second World War. And the troops were ordered, if they saw a pigeon, to shoot at it, which is a terrible thing to do because it might have a message from the enemy in there. But they used pigeons during the Second World War to pass messages, and especially in the First World War. But they actually had cats in the First World War, loads and loads and loads and loads of strays. This is one thing that helped the troops on the ground through to actually keep the rat population down in the trenches. So lots of troops had pussycats with them, which must have been quite, well, a little bit of a respite, because pussycats are marvellous animals to have around. But you think, and also dogs. Now, there's a very famous dog, but they were trained to go out and try and find the wounded in no man's land and bark to show that there's a wounded person, and the stretcher bearers would go out to them. Well, there was one dog that went out, found someone that was wounded, but there was a second bombardment that happened, so they couldn't hear the dogs barking. So the dog and this wounded person was there all night, and it's freezing cold, and the dog kept quiet and laid on the wounded soldier's body to keep him warm, and then next morning alerted the stretcher bearers, and it was thanks to that dog that kept the chap alive. And I think the dog got an award for it. But you think it's natural for an animal to run in terror away from anything like that. But you think of the bravery of those animals and the, you know, the intelligence of those animals. It's quite incredible. But this is the one good thing about the mechanisation of war. You don't have horses. Apart from the Swiss army, they still use horses because in Switzerland, I mean, Switzerland's armed to the teeth because they need horses to take them around the, you know, around the Alps and whatever, you know. But and also the Swiss army still uses pigeons as well. I saw a documentary about it, and this chap said that it's the only corps where the lower ranks can crap on the higher ranks and get away with it. But in Switzerland, they got a very strange idea. Every male up to the age of 50 must do several weeks in the army every year. And it's like a sort of, and what they do, they aim this sort of 2 weeks at your hobbies. So, for example, there's a dentist that likes flying, so he's a pilot in the Swiss Air Force. This bloke was a pigeon fancier, so he went into the pigeon service. There's mountaineers that are in a mountaineering service. But every bridge that goes into Switzerland has actually got TNT underneath it. It's actually, you know, can be blown up, and they're absolutely neurotic about defence, the Swiss. So, and of course, as you may or may not know, the Swiss DNA, as well as the Sicilian DNA, originates from Ukraine, a certain member of tribe of people beginning with A, but we won't go into that because I might get booted off of YouTube. Now, Haji, I have a Bavarian German lady friend. There is no cenotaph in Germany. That aside, how is me Ruby and Wilcox, ladies? Ah, that's nice. Yes, and also it's very sad, and it's that there isn't very much like that in Germany, but also there's a German cemetery up near where Krista Gardner lives, because and what they did, they buried the pilots. There was a couple of air crashes around there of German planes, and they buried the pilots there. So they've got a German cemetery up near, was it Sandringham, I think it is. Right. Now, it says here, hope you're all well. This is Angel Ruby. And Pup 2, coping, thank you. Right. Anyone know how Bee's doing? Bees. Oh, Buzzy Bees. Buzzy. Right. Aunt Sally. Oh, thank you, Aunt Sally. Chris's dad's book is worthy buy. It's huge and extremely well written. I believe it will be an heirloom for the next generations. Bless you. Thank you very much, Aunt Sally. That's much appreciated. I haven't pushed it that much on this show because I don't think it would. It's not in context. I mean, it is in context, but I thought it would be in, I suppose, sort of bad taste to do something where you're selling books as a remembrance. So I thought, well, you know, I'm a bit weird like that, I suppose. I know. Am I right? David Cameron is the new Foreign Secretary. Unfortunately, you are right. Yes, he is a new Foreign Secretary. Yes. A man of, well, I won't say, you know. Now we've got here. Oh, by the way, it's available on Amazon as well. We can get it on Amazon. I do not buy many books, but I did Chris's dad's because it holds nothing but truth. Bless you. Thank you, Ancient Ruby. Yes, there's a link below here in the comments section. Not in the comments, in the description section. And you can get it on Amazon. And there's several ways you can get the book, and it was updated, the one on Amazon, or you can get the original directly from myself. So you know, now the theatre of war. This is Sean Hamer. Bad actors. There are clues hidden in plain sight in the land of make believe. Yes. Well, the first casualty of war is truth. And well, it's a bit like there's a lot of pictures still floating around that people believe showing French ladies kissing English troops who have arrived on D-Day. But when you look at the pictures very, very carefully, there it is said that these pictures were actually taken in Herefordshire a year before D-Day, because you notice that the troops are very well turned out, neatly shaved, nice and clean. And where did the French ladies get all the Union Jacks from? They said they've been hiding them away throughout the occupation. Really? Really? Yes. And look at the lorries, very clean, and they're supposed to have come off of been come over by a ship, unloaded, gone through sand, shit, mud, God knows what. Nah. Yes, but people still believe those pictures to be true. That is the thing, you know. And now let's go down a little bit more. Now, there are many clone leaders, more now than ever before. Well, you're right there. And have you seen that one of Biden, where he's scratching his neck, and it looks sort of, how would you describe it? You know, when you put your finger on the side of a balloon, it's a bit like that. It's sort of not quite real. So, you know, I don't think Biden is alive, actually. I think they're just actors with these masks on. You know, that's the thing. Now, it's got here. Nigel up the Farage, this is Hachi, is in the same camp in a jungle as a cock. He could be an odds-on favourite for a winner. I'm sure he'll save England. Laugh my arse off. Was Farage in this, because I don't have a telly, I don't watch the telly, is Farage up the bleeding jungle then, or up the duff or something like that? Now it says here, fur balls, Chris, stop licking your eye. Ah, that's what it is. Yeah, I've got fur balls, that's it. You can't have fur balls, you know. Now, it says here, the start of Sweet Leaf, yes. And I was coughing my guts up, the wrong hole, Chris. Yes, garlic will make it gone. I bought some garlic the other day, yes. Now, I'm going to sort of change the subject very briefly, then come back to it. And I was going to talk to you about these I did the other week. These are FOC mobs, you see. These are the Fockham Hall currency. And funny enough, I was looking up our local MP, and he's got I had to write it down because I couldn't remember it. He's been given a gong, and he's got a KBE. So I thought, what's that? A kleptomaniac of the British Empire? Now, if he is, and I'd like a new computer system, please. You know, I just thought, you know, you never know. You don't get if you don't ask. But no, have you noticed the establishment always had these Ponzi titles? KBE, which is the Knight of the British Empire. So I was actually thinking, Fockham, you got to take the piss out of these people. You got to give you, I mean, for example, Fockham Hall Times, that has an award for journalism, which I gave myself, and I'm not a journalist. Can you smell something? It's bullshit, yeah. I was thinking of, why not award just because remember, you can be not a Fockham citizen, a Fockham individual, wherever you are, you see. So Fockham Hall is wherever you are. So, for example, we've got John in Siam. He is the cultural attaché and ambassador to Fockham in Siam, you see. And you could be anywhere, and it doesn't matter what nationality you are. You can be any nationality, it doesn't matter. You could still be not a Fockham citizen, but a Fockham individual, you see, because everybody's an individual. And this is why I think we need our own currency. Here it is. You can buy Fockham Hall with this. And as I said the other week, you can actually download these now off of my website. And here it is. Here we go. If you look near the bottom there, you press the button and you can actually print them off. See, so if you're short of a few bob, you can become very rich overnight. So there's the website, and it's fockhamhallradio.com, And I think, quite honestly, you can see the Fockham Hall Times there, which you can read for free. Award-winning journalism, of course. And and I'd like to hear from you if anybody has actually printed these off, if they've had any problems at all, because it's nice to get feedback, and you can get old Klausy, you can get all kinds of money there. And I like to see people's faces when you give them out. So would you like some money? And surprise, surprise, look who's on that one. Here he is. Yeah, vile specimen. See? And if you look, it's Fockham Universal Currency of Kindness, official Fockham Finance, you see. So there we go. We got a fickle. Now I was thinking of some Fockham, things we could give to ourselves, because you got to award yourself bullshit. They like awarding themselves, the establishment. Why don't we? So I was actually thinking of now. What about this? The Fockham Order of Fockham Freedom. So it's FOFF. You could have that after your name, couldn't you? Think about it. So it'd be the Fockham Order of Fockham Freedom. See? So do you think that's a nice award? Because there's the Order of the British Empire. So because you can have the Fockham Order of Fockham Freedom. Yes. I'm just thinking, just an idea. In fact, we could actually. No, I won't give Tony Blair that. No. Anyway, now Tony Blair. War criminal who destroyed Libya. Yeah. And that was old Dooflop, wasn't it? Oh Christ, can't think of his names. A lot of orange bands marching in Scotland yesterday. Really? I know they do a lot of orange marmalade up there, do they? Orange bands. Oh, because the orange, is it the Orange Order? And I don't know much about that, But and then we got here Cameron, poor prepper pig. Well, actually, I've actually helped him in a business, you see, because if you look at behind this note, hang on, here it is. That's a Fockham. That's a Fockham Fock Bob, you see, and that was Deb's idea for Fock Bobs. You'll see here an advert for Cameron's Pig-Head Sausages. If you go on my website, you'll be able to see it for yourself. And you've got a special offer: buy one pack for the price of two and get one free. You see, and it was just after it was announced that he. Part of his initiation ceremony into his university was to stick his toddler into a pig's head, which is put me off sausage rolls for a week. It did, and I thought, well, why not have some pig head sausages? You see, so there it is. You see, and again, please tell me how you get on with the Fock Bobs. And set Africa back 50 years by destroying the water pipelines. That's right, yes. And also Libya stopped the mass influx of people coming from Africa to Europe. And, it's like a cork. Now, we got here Chris the Gardener. I'm with you, Chris. I don't wear a poppy. I think Remembrance Day is just the powers that shouldn't be laughing at us. Spot on, mate. They try to glorify war to justify it. Well, that's it. It's a justification industry. I mean, I admire people. I'm not being disrespectful, though. I think it's being more respectful by wanting to know the truth and remembering the kindness and the genuineness of people, and looking at, to me, the forces should be there to protect this island. Full stop, end of. That's it. And they should be stopping rubber boats coming over, and they should be protecting us. That's what their job is. But, not gallivanting over out of Mongolia or somewhere, Are they spraying us? I bet they are. Yes, they certainly are. Dan MC, it's okay. Tony Blair is going to Lady Gaga to negotiate peace. Bloody hell, God help us. Yeah, because apparently he's Tony Blair has actually got a flat in the country we're not allowed to criticise. So I hear, yes, and this is another thing. He's got a business, and actually, it's just around the corner from the BBC. What does that business actually do apart from bullshit? You know. Now it says here, Sean Hayman says they commemorate the sacrifice ritual, uh, feigning mourning that never stretches to the victims of their wars. I remember something which scared the living daylights out of me when I was very, very young. I was in infant school at the time. And when you're young, you know, you're very impressionable. And I think I must have been about 7, 6, something like that. I don't know. And I saw this person about 2 or 3 times. And there was a person that had their whole side of there's obviously a victim of World War, I would assume World War II, I do not know. The whole side, their ear was missing, and there's like a concave in their side of their head. And it really, as a child, it really frightened me. And I saw this person 2 or 3 times. It gave me nightmares. It was, you know, it was very frightening. But I was always told as a child, never stare at a person who's disabled. So I didn't stare. You know, you never do that. It's unpolite to do so. And I didn't show my emotions of fear. I just sort of carried on, you know. But when you think of the war disabled from the First World War, and if you see, where is it now? That video that's on the top left there, the war justification industry, that certainly has got a lot of information on there. But again, I couldn't put that on YouTube. That's on another platform. But you'll be able to see it, and you know, it's hopefully it'll be a bit moving. You know, now the other one we got here. Now this is Hatchy Hatchy. Who would have thought Nigel Farage could win I'm a Celebrity on $1.5 million contract? Get me out. Is he on that celebrity thing? Out of here. Any airline sickness bags out there? Well, Nigel Farage, somebody once said on a local radio program when I used to listen to local radio many years ago, that they knew someone phoned in who knew his father and said Nigel Farage couldn't come in the local pub because his head's too big to get through the door. So that was saying something. I can't stand Nigel Farage. I absolutely can't. So, I mean, last time I saw I'm a Celebrity Get Me Out of Here was years ago when Tony Blackburn was on it. And that was the time when I was sort of saying I've had enough of television, because I don't particularly want to switch the television on at night and see someone drying their underpants over a fire and eating worms. No, thank you. That's not my idea of entertainment. I mean, celebrity is people who've got those souls. I mean, you know. Louise Wilcox. Sorry, all had a visitor, so I waged off for a little while. Note from parents, please. No. No. Hello, Agent Ruby. Winter, hope you are both well. Forgive my delay in response. No, don't worry. Yes, all right. We're all friends here. There we got here. Hello, this is Stephen Truthseeker. Hello, interesting Chris. Has a coughing fit as soon as he talks about blood sacrifice. Yeah, it's funny that, isn't it? But by the way, if you want to carry on with the conversations and that, I'm on Telegram, which is you can see the link there, and there's a link below, and we have some very, very interesting discussions on Telegram. It's better than ask about Facebook. But also, if you're not into Telegram, there's also the Fockham Hall, or what do they call it, group on Facebook. I actually comment a lot in there, but I don't on the main Facebook, you know. Now, curious fact, this is Drobert Door. Donkeys have a cross emblazoned on their backs. It's said that this is a tribute to Jesus. That's quite right, Robert, yes, as he rode around on one. That's interesting, that, isn't it? Yes. Apparently, donkeys are very nice animals because they're very placid. So I've heard. Because there's a horse charity near where I live, Ada Cole. That's just up the road to me. Ada Cole. They had donkeys and horses. I think they had donkeys. I know. But just one moment. I need to whistle the whistle again. And now, no, the thing is that it's terrible the way we treat animals, especially in wartime and that. Because did you know the Americans had an idea? They didn't. They didn't know how to aim missiles to their targets, and they trained pigeons. This is 100% true. They trained pigeons to look on battleships as food, and the idea was they'd be in this sort of little chamber inside a missile, and they'd be pecking away. When they see the battleship, they start pecking even more, and it would act as a guidance to the missile. I don't think they ever used it, but that was terrible. And the way they used dolphins as well. They had kamikaze dolphins who didn't know they were kamikaze. They had bombs strapped to the back of them. But the worst one was the Russians. They had, this is true. They had this brilliant idea of strapping bombs to the backs of dogs and for them to look upon enemy or to look on tanks as food. So they would actually go over towards the tanks, German tanks, and blow them up, you see. But unfortunately, they didn't train the dogs to tell the difference between a Russian tank and a German tank, and it sent a whole division into reverse. So, oops. But it's not, I shouldn't really laugh because a lot of innocent poor little doggies got killed, because of that. And also we got to remember, what was it, Little Lemon, and that was Lana, was it? The first dog in space, if you believe they went into space, who had a one-way journey. She was a stray that they picked off the streets, and she was sent up into the atmosphere, and they reckon she survived for quite a long time. The food ran out, and then the oxygen ran out. So what a brave dog, very sad, that is. Gun dog, Chris, I met one at Southampton Cenotaph yesterday. Unfortunate. Yes. Oh, gun dog, yes. It's interesting. But whoops, now let's have a look down here. Ancient Ruby says, your book will be kept for future reference of new generations to come. Superb. Thank you very much. Well, it's thanks to Shannon, what she did for ages. The book was published in 1999 and no publishers would touch it. I could write a book about trying to get the book published. And in those days, places like Amazon didn't exist. And book publishers, one bloke said, I kid you not, he hadn't read the book, we hadn't read the draft, and he said, right, I want a picture of Churchill on the front and a Union Jack and all this. And I just didn't say a word. I just closed my briefcase and just walked out of this bloke's office. Didn't say a word. I was so disgusted. And it's a right rip-off, the publishing world was, but it isn't any longer. And I actually had to pay out of my savings to get my dad's book published because publishers wouldn't touch it. And because it wasn't full of gung-ho crap. That's the thing. It wasn't full of all this bellicose stuff. And thanks to Shannon, I've been trying to get it onto Amazon for a long time. And she actually did all the type scripts and things like that. And she got it onto Amazon and we updated it. And there's another book because my dad wrote 2 books, Horrors of D-Day as well. And that was taken from his main book. And we're hoping to get that on Amazon soon as well. And that'll be a lot cheaper. But it's my dad did all the proofreading to it as well, so he did the lot, and he typed it on an old Amstrad computer, and that's it. So thank you very much. Thanks for that, Ancient Ruby. It's very kind. Now, Stephen the Truth Seeker says, if you get into what Michael Cesarian says, he talks about, I bet I got his surname wrong, he talks about how the blood sacrifice works during wars, like using occult symbols. Well, when you look at it, look at the First World War. I mean, that was absolute carnage. Um, you know, it was. I think that Blackadder summed it up. I think Stephen Fry acted the part of that jerk. They all acted it perfectly. But I love that scene where he goes. Stephen Fry comes out as a sort of. I think is it K. He acts a part of one of them, and he says, "Okay, there's this sort of grass patch in the office." He says, "Right, what's this is what we've captured today, is it?" He says, "Yes, sir. Um, what scale is this?" He said, "Full size." Just captured that, and that was actually the futility of the First World War. You know, unbelievable. I mean, just going straight over the top. And I remember an old chap saying, because a lot of war veterans around where I lived, and it was a friend of my aunt's, I think, and he had this concave part on his head. You looked at him, and his sort of head was concaved in a part, and he was in the First World War, and I mean, he must have been in his 80s at the time. And well, sorry, 80s when I heard him speaking, and not during the First World War. And he said that he had he was just about to go over the top, and a lump of shrapnel went straight into the side of his head. And the senior ranks went along the lines with their guns, and anybody who refused everybody had to go over the top. And he's holding this shrapnel. And he said, "Look, I'm injured." He said, "Get over that top." He said, "I'm injured. You've got to go over the top, or I'll kill you. I'll shoot you." So he had to get over the top, holding his head, and run forward, holding his head with a lump of shrapnel coming out of his head. And that's why he had that concave part of his head. I mean, and that was the way they looked on human life. The officers used to go along, and he said, with an actual gun and threaten the blokes if they didn't go over the top. And I know that my mother's uncle, he was actually buried alive, and his colleagues saw where he was, and they managed to dig him out, but he was stone deaf afterwards. But he still had to carry on in the army, stone deaf. And after the war, he didn't get a pension, and they said that that they told him that he was deaf from childhood. And he said, "Well, if I was deaf from childhood, how comes I was A1 fit? There's the paper. When I went into the war and I could hear." And they tried everything under the book, and he never got a pension. They diddled him out of his pension. Again, where was the British Legion? Where were they helping? That was it's surprising. They do help some people, yes. I mean, I'm not totally condemning them. They do help a lot of people. They do help a lot of veterans, but only within the context of what the government pumps out. They don't go above the government, against the government, and they don't sort of stand up for veterans. Oh, hang on, it's gone dark again. Whee! Let's come back again. Whee! There we are again. That's it. Right. Now we've got our Robert Dorr. Oh, yes. Both great tracks. Oh, we're talking about computers here, don't worry. Ancient Ruby says, "Our king has a clone, and it truly is a rough copy." Yeah, I noticed that. During the lockdown, he seemed to have a big red nose and red ears. And I've noticed the new actor of him, he's a bit better, One doesn't this, yes. I'm sort of, what is it now? World Economic Forum. We want to kill loads of people, doesn't one? Yes. I afraid I haven't got much time for royalty. Now it says the real deep fakes are rubber in Washington, and yes, I won't mention it because of I don't want to set off the klaxons in YouTube. And Robert says it looks as if Biden was made of latex. It does. Have you seen him fall arse over tit off his bike? That's a funny one, isn't it? I mean, bloody hell, he looks about 300 years old, that bloke. And Stephen the Truth Seeker said, "Is Tony Blair the Antichrist?" I would have thought so, yes. I can't stand the man. He just, ugh, you know. Now, now let's look down here. We're coming up to time soon. So, oh, anal short. Yes, yes, yes. No, actually, it's a 5 footbob note. You see, here we are. So there it is. And remember, you can download it off the old website. Here it comes. Here we are. See, you download it there and have as much money as you want off of there. Can't spend it on anything because it's worth sod all. But as I said, you know, when you give them to people, they look and they look as if they've been touched up. That sort of, you know, you can't get much for £5 these days. Well, I was talking to a bloke on the I go to the market regularly and see a bloke on the stall there because, you know, I love a bargain. I don't know about you. I like a rummage and a bargain. I like to go into a shop and have a good rummage around and see what I want. Like second-hand shops. Oh, I love them. And he said, this bloke on the stall holder, I talk to him regularly, he reckons that £1 is equivalent to a penny in Victorian times. I think he's right, actually. He did about that, you know. Now, poppies are the opium of the people. Yeah, man, it certainly is. Now, let's have a look. It's from this Sean Hayman says, it's from a song by Rudimentary Penny called Poppycock. Yes, that's interesting. And we've got Robert Dorr says, Chris is right. Charities and foundations are pretty much all mass money grabs. Yes, and they're also propaganda agencies, I believe. I really do believe that, you know. Not all of them. I mean, there are some, you know, pussycat charities that are run by old dears that are, you know, just about just about afford it. Sean Hamer says the UK will be the prison island for the EU. You got a good point there. Yes, yes, prison planet. You know, and Louise Wilcox says they like their magic numbers on the 11th day of the 11th month, 11th hour. They feed off the negative energy of millions, remembering those that died. Yes, yes, you got a good point there. Yes, yes. Isn't it strange though, you know, that it's the 11th, 11th, 11th all the way through. And when you look at it, you've got 9, 11. And the two towers, 11. Odd, isn't it? You know. Now, we've got here, Ancient Ruby says, poor dog, among others. Wicked, not brave to put them in space. Oh, you're talking about, was it Little Lemon? It's disgusting me that they did this. It is. I mean, America, they also did experiments, didn't they, where they cut the head off of one dog and sewed it onto another dog. That was in the 60s, I believe. The Russians did experiments. And I think the Americans did the same. Absolutely vile. Absolutely disgusting. I mean, they can, as far as I'm concerned, they can experiment all they want with robots. Robots are machines. Robots don't have feelings. Well, they don't yet. You know, I mean, if they want to send something up into the atmosphere, or send a robot up there, you know. But with animals, I mean, everything has a right to life. And as I was saying the other week, I think that psychopaths have as much right to live on this planet as we do, but away from us. And I look on psychopaths on the same way as I look on crocodiles. A crocodile has a right to live on this planet, but not with us and not with our house, because not with in our house, because they'll eat us. They're predators. They look on us as food, the same way as a psychopath looks on us in more than say as food, but as a predator. But keep them away from us. Stick them on an island, but away from us. But they let them live their life out. And if they want to blow their brains out, let them do it. You know. Now it says here, if Captain Sensible appears in the jungle, in the garage, Farage, not wanting to get too deep, I'm sure he'd enjoy it. Nothing like feeling sold out as an Englishman. Well, that jungle thing, apparently, it's not in the jungle. It's a bloody park and there's a hotel around the corner. Bullshit. Oh Christ, I mean, um, and what gets me, I mean, do you really want to see people eating grubs and shit? Oh, not really. Um, now let's have a look what we got here. War is mankind's punishment for not engaging in dialogue. Yes. Well, every war memorial is, to me, a sort of marker that shows how bad governments are, because I believe that we could have kept out the First World War, and if we'd have kept out the First World War, there probably wouldn't have been a Second World War. Now, meanwhile, the British Legion are helping their fellow Masons. Good point. Good point. Yes, very good point. Yes. And now, callous idiots. Yes. Oh dear. Sorry about the coughing. Now, Hadji says Winston Churchill like ladies' panties. Crikey, I've got a little story about that. Crikey, and here's me sleeping with buds at night time. I know he likes a bit of chicken in the morning. Well, apparently Churchill had a thing about ginger-haired ladies, and the Secret Service gave him a ginger cat. Just to be sarcastic. That's true, apparently, yes. That's it. I think he's also AC/DC as well. Because did you know that, I think it's when Eisenhower went to visit him, he was actually on the crapper. And he used to actually dictate to his secretaries whilst he's in the bath. Now, Sean Hamer says, as the truth movement has collapsed completely, yes it has, I am now grateful that the time I invested in questioning everything has given me the armour to get through the psyops war. Yes, I agree with you. And what gets me about the so-called truth movement is you've got a lot of idle minds there, and a lot of minds that have been brainwashed by GB News and other such controlled opposition. And little Tommy Tucker from Luton, who's running around with a flag of a country that we're not allowed to criticise around him. I wonder who could be paying him. Yes. I like this one. This is from like Ancient Ruby. We're talking about the American president. He is latex and loving it. He acts, he even acts to act stupid. Yeah, you're right. Yes, that's correct. Yes, he's latex and loving it. Yeah, I'll have to. Now, this is another interesting one. This is 100% true. Franz Ferdinand, that's the chap who was a shot at the beginning, that's supposed to trigger the First World War by a Serbian student. Franz Ferdinand's number plate was 1111. And the strange thing about that day is the driver wasn't going to do that route and changed his mind at the last moment and went on this other route where that Serbian student, was a picture of him in the tree standing there waiting, was in waiting. So if he'd have taken the other route, who knows what would have happened, Now, Louise Wilcox says, Robert Dawes, sorry mate, I disagree. War is not a punishment for lack of dialogue. It is a punishment made by the powers that shouldn't be to cull the real men as they fear them uprising again against them. It's an interesting point, yes. But what it always makes me laugh though is that there's always this sort of this sort of idea that wars always start in the same way. It's always an outrage, then they try and get peace negotiations, But it always starts with an outrage, doesn't it? Every war starts with an outrage. Now, where are we? Now, is there anywhere that doesn't have a Masonic temple hall? Yeah, you got a very good point there. Yes. Did I ever tell you I got a Masonic handshake once? Even I'm not a Mason. And this bloke, it was really. If I can show it, how can I show it? That's it. No, I'm showing this on the wrong side. He tapped my wrist like that. I thought it was a bloody funny handshake. It was like a tap there. I should have done it back, but I didn't. But there we go. And we've got Chris, snakes in the grass, wonderful entertainment and watching. Entertainment watching. Oh yes, you're talking about the Farage and that. And paranoid, what's this? Have to be everywhere. Producers. I think so. Anyway, thank you everyone for joining me tonight in chat. Thursday I'm a little bit busy, so I won't be doing the Thursday show. But please join me next week where I've got Chris the Gardener coming on. We're going to do a very interesting show. And again, thank you so much for joining me tonight. And as I'm saying, and also, Mark, not every show do you get someone coughing their guts up. So you know that's a unique thing. The show with and I'm just looking for the outtake. I've got the outro here. And as I say, please join us next week, same time, same place. And I'm hoping, I keep saying this, to get Dr. Miles Fleetwood on the show soon. But he's very, very busy. He's an extremely busy man all the time. And again, we'll be getting John Hamer back and the usual regulars, Robert and Wayne and that, and Chris, of course. And thank you very much and good night. And whatever happens, have a bloody good laugh. Good night.